Seems fair to me.
Yes, he did.
Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Thank you so much for joining us for another edition of Donnybrook, although we're a little bit late tonight. Thank you for waiting through the president's speech, and we will talk about the issues of the week here in St. Louis. But first, let's meet the panelists, starting with Wendy Wiese from the Big 550, KTRS, Bill McClellan from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, from Substack, and the founder of the Riverfront Times, Ray Hartmann, and from the St. Louis American, the father of the bride, Alvin Reid.
Almost here.
Saturday's the big day
Saturday.
for Bryson Reid.
Yep.
And her lucky betrothed.
Yep, Tyler and 75 and Sunny. How about that? On October 21st.
Nice.
Okay.
So far, so good.
All right.
And like I said, it's all paid for. So somebody's marrying
You're just
somebody.
gonna have a good time.
Bill McClellan, I want to ask you about something that I was just flabbergasted when two democratically run entities, St. Louis County, St. Louis City, decided to go with the tax break, which was made possible by the Republican legislature in Jefferson City this spring. Basically, senior citizens can get their property taxes frozen. And St. Charles County did it. That wasn't too much of a surprise. But now in the city of St. Louis, if you're the owner of a home that's worth less than $500,000 and you're 62 years old, they'll freeze your taxes. The portion of your taxes frozen will not, the library and the school taxes won't be frozen, but the municipal taxes will. And then in St. Louis County, it's a little bit different. You have to be 67. Your house can't be worth more than $550,000, but all of those property taxes will be frozen. The library, the schools, and of course, county government. Are you coming around on this one?
No, I'm not. You know, I hate to disrespect old people. Some of my best friends are older people. But it just makes no sense to me to give tax breaks to senior citizens when, you know, I remember from my own life when Mary and I were starting out, it was much harder. And when we had kids, and then you have college, all these expenses come along, and you finally make it through and you get to be a senior citizen, and now they're giving you a tax break. I don't understand it. I think it's the young families and the people who are trying to pay high school tuition and college tuition that everybody needs a tax break, and I think those other people need it more than seniors.
And I just don't think that they actually care about the seniors. They care about the seniors' votes. I think this is pandering. I really do. I just think
What
that
a
this
new concept. That's never been done
because
before.
it just doesn't make any sense. And quite frankly, this caters to affluent senior people, not those whose house is worth, you know, $80,000 and up to $500,000 or whatever. Those are the people that they are trying to help people that are trying to put two pennies together.
But
they're trying to help people that are
affluent, right? It's
Yes.
up to $500,000, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're still going to get the help they need. There are some people who you would describe as affluent who will also get that help. I think that they're going to be, I think that senior citizens, and I do look in the mirror every once in a while, and I know that I am a senior citizen, there is a fixed income situation, and that's not the case for, I agree with Sarah Finsky a couple of weeks ago in terms of a means test. But there are some seniors who could really use this.
I think it should have been done on income, not property value. I mean, that's one thing. But I do think there are a lot of seniors who are struggling. There was a long period of time when your property taxes were stable and your house wasn't reappraised in the county.
Right.
And until like the 1990s, and then the house gets reappraised and your taxes go up. And if you're a senior on fixed income and you've got a mortgage that is going up, where are you supposed to make that money?
And not only that, but a lot of
the working people are on a fixed income. I mean, you
No,
don't.
they're not.
Well, well,
By definition, they are not.
Well, when I was working full time on the newspaper, I got a salary, and that salary stayed the same until the union, every 3 or 4 years, negotiated a raise. It wasn't like I was making $40,000 now and $50,000 then.
No, but wages are going up. But you and I are in the wrong business. We're in communications and media where salaries have been stable.
A lot of these senior citizens have just been chased out of the job market, essentially.
Now, but the problem is, I want to disagree with Alvin just a little bit. I think in the county, this is going to hurt the school districts that have the homes that are valued under, $550,000. Those are the ones that can be frozen. Like Ladue, Town and Country, Clayton, you can't find a single home that's worth less than $550,000. So there'll be no tax breaks there. But in the school districts that can't afford it, that's where the problems are going to be.
Well, but that's already a problem. Like I said, and like I said, for a long period of time, there was one thing about the, like personal property tax. For a long period of time, gas didn't cost $2. And for a long period of time, it was $8 for your electricity bill. Them times is gone. And so thus, everybody has got to, hey, look, yeah. And also, if you are, we're talking about how much are you going to save on your personal property tax? This resident in North County, $12. How much you gonna save, Mr. and Mrs. Chesterfield? $2,200. That's what's taking the bite out of the county, and that's the reason they don't care.
Those Chesterfield homes are $1.2 million now.
I know somebody lives in one.
Well, I'm opposed to both. I'm opposed to them in both jurisdictions, at least as they are now. First of all, if you're gonna, Kelly Dunaway is one of the people that
she's on the St. Louis County Council.
Council wanted it lowered. I think it's fine. If you're going to lower, it should be much lower. I mean, I think it should be maybe $300,000. I mean, in other words, I think it's way too high, that threshold. But the bigger issue here, certainly in the county, is it's just been governmental malpractice on the part of the county council right now, because no one has a clue as to how much this is going to cost. In other words, you just don't do stuff like this and say, well, you've got to do the math first before you even propose something like this. And it just shows the low level of functionality we have at these governments, that whether, to your point, it sounds good, but no one's done the math. And the idea of being a legislator, a county councilman, alderperson, is you're supposed to do the math first, okay? And then you figure out if you can be afforded, and then you can talk about how it impacts the schools. Conceptually, if it was, like I say, a lower number, and I mean much lower, like a number
300,
or even lower, I think you could make the case for seniors, but although I do think that there's a great point to be made about needing to keep young people who are also affected if they're on a lower level. So I just think that's all I got to say.
All right, Ray, we're going to move on to Alvin. And in your city, the city of Kirkwood, Sunday, there was an event for the kids called Trunk or Treat. And it turns out a St. Louis County cop, Matt McClellan, who happens to be the son of the former county prosecutor, Robert McCullough, went on a shooting spree. He shot about, 6 or so shots into the sky.
12. It was 12.
12. He said, according to witnesses, he was saying, you're all going to die. He was tackled by others who held him until the police got there, but apparently he was laughing throughout. So the guy doesn't seem to be in his right mind, but he's facing 11 charges. Wesley Bell is the prosecutor. He's the guy who defeated Matt McCullough's father, Robert McCullough, because of that connection. Alvin, Reid, do you think it might make sense for Bell to move this to a different jurisdiction, for Gabe Gore, the prosecutor in the city, or go out to Jefferson County or somewhere else?
Absolutely not. Because one, this happened in St. Louis County. Let's not run away from it. This is not about who the former prosecutor is, but this does involve his son. People were pleading with Bob McCullough to not try some of these cases in St. Louis County because of, situations with him, and he blatantly ignored that. So, no, this should not be. This should be tried. It should come to its adjudication in St. Louis County. I have said on the show before, and we were talking about Kim Gardner and attorneys and whatnot, I still think, attorneys have a tendency to watch out for one another. Do I think that he would end up going to jail off this? I think there's a possibility, but I just warn people out there, if you think he's going to do any like real time off of this incident, I doubt that very seriously.
Well, I
think this will be pleaded down, but it needs to be pleaded down in St. Louis County.
I'd like to disagree a little, half disagree with Alvin, and that is, I think, of course, it's got to be, not, the jurisdiction can't be moved, it's got to be tried in St. Louis County. You could make a case, so he's not obligated to, but I think it would be better for Wesley Bell to bring in a special prosecutor to prosecute it in St. Louis County. I mean, not a change of venue. And the reason for that is, and he certainly doesn't, he's not obligated. I think it'd be better for Wesley Bell to just say, look, this is the son of the guy I ran against, and I think, you know, for appearance's sake, I'm going to let somebody else. And frankly, I just think it would be better for him. I do think that this should not be mistaken for a victimless crime. Just because the shots went in the air, there's kids that are going to be traumatized.
Yep.
And I would...
No one's saying that.
No, and I think that, you know, Alvin's got a great point about justice doesn't seem to land very hard on police officers in these cases, to say the least. But there's a really good case.
It's a very unusual case.
There's a really good case for this. There's a really good case for this involving some time.
Well, you know, it's interesting that under what might be normal circumstances, people would think, well, this is a Democratic prosecutor, and the former guy's a Democrat, and so he's going to give this guy a break. And yet, because Bob was not a very gracious loser, and there's a tendency to think that, well, can Wesley Bell be fair? But then you come to the point of what is fair in this case. I mean, I cannot recall a similar case, you know, a shooting where he wasn't shooting at anybody and nobody was hit, but with all those children around, I mean, what is a fair result of this? I mean, I don't know.
I trust Wesley Bell with that decision.
I would say if I was Wesley Bell, and I'm a candidate for the U.S. Senate in Missouri, I would let someone else prosecute this case.
Or Congress.
Well, but no, he is a candidate for U.S. Senate right now. I'm not speculating he's going to run for Congress. I would say, you're prosecuting a cop in this state, let someone else do this.
Well, you know, and I agree. Listen, I think Wesley Bell is 100% capable of doing it. I just think it'd be better for him.
That's what I just said.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just adding to.
What do you think about
if we had a vote like in St. Louis County, like we could just pass any like anti-gun law that we wanted to, they would pass. So look, we don't like all this shooting and guns. I don't care who's doing it. And I think Wesley Bell could say, like, look, I don't care who it is. I'm not going to have a maniac shooting a gun in the alleged maniac, shooting a gun in the air with children all around, and him not paying a substantial price for that.
Okay, we'll see. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on. Sorry, but the time is limited. It's only a 28-minute show.
Okay.
Ray Hartmann, I want to ask you about KDHX. Today, there is still no resolution with the dispute between management and the volunteer disc jockeys. Some have quit, some have been fired, some are on strike. I would think at this point there'd be, you know, hey, a kumbaya where people would say, cooler heads are prevailing. For the interest of our listeners, this is what we're going to do. What do you think?
I think there needs to. I think this is one of those situations, and I have a lot of sympathy for the folks that kind of built the station. I kind of describe them, and this is not pejorative, as old hippies. You know, I like them. Some of the people like Tom Ray and some of the others, just great souls and gave everything. And I'm not sure some of them don't have very valid grievances. That said, they've got, I think, 54 DJs still. They program 168 hours a week. They've got 54 DJs still working as volunteers. I think they need to get to 84. And I think the people, there's been a lot of vilification of the board members and the director and stuff, there's people like Frank Flotron and Joan Bray, former state reps. They've been doing this for a decade. They care as much about the future of the station as the people that are upset. And there's been so much vilification of them and the director, and I don't think it's fair. I think it's you've got two teams of people that care equally about this station, and this has gotten way blown out of proportion. They need to and I don't think you can blame management.
Well, I can. Let me disagree with you there. You say there's been a lot of vilification, and there has, but it didn't start with the volunteers. It started when Tom Ray had a dispute about honoring somebody who had died, and at first that's what they said it was about, and then when Tom Ray seemed to have some support, they said, well, he was actually a bully and a harasser. There was the vilification, and then you have the DJs who said, well, you know, we're stopping, we're resigning. And how did the board respond to that? They said that, well, they suggested that, well, they were sexist and racist and they weren't with the new program. And then when people said that's crazy, well, they backed off of that then. I mean, the vilification, Ray, started at the top. It started with the people who are running the station, not with the volunteers.
And now, it's kind of like you were saying, like two sides equally care. I think it's now getting to the point where people that aren't involved in this issue are starting to care a lot less. I'm kind of like, look, what they did to these DJs was not right. I'm not just talking about just dismissing it, but the reasoning behind it. I would still be taking some action about that. But the prolonged, you know, now we want a new board and this long letter that the gentleman sent that I couldn't make heads or tails of. And I just don't know where it's going anymore. God bless the 54 volunteers that are there, but at the same time, I'm thinking like, well, you know, if they're treating these people like that, what makes you think they aren't going to end up treating you like that too? I have a tendency to look at situations like that. So
well, why not just say, come on back, but when you come back and you're on the air, off the air, don't encourage people not to give to KDHX.
That's what I would do.
And let's forget it. Let's forget. Bygones be bygones. Let's move on.
Right, I agree.
Well, I think they
Did
need
you
some,
say 54 DJs? Is that correct?
They have 54. They normally have 84. That's how it works. They program 100. No, I'm not making this.
This is non-commercial radio.
Charlie and I are looking at each other like,
no, this is their structure. I didn't know this.
I know.
But they have 168 hours to program, and that's how they do it.
You are a Rain Man. You have the number.
This is, you know what? This is
1 hour shows.
Trillions of dollars. This is trillions of dollars of free publicity. I agree.
And I think
let bygones be bygones.
I do.
And get back to the work.
Okay,
I'm not arguing.
Wendy Wiese, got to ask you about Ann Wagner, local congresswoman, who said last week to Politico that she thought the actions of her fellow Congressman Jim Jordan were disgraceful and ungracious. And she was asked, would you vote for him for Speaker of the House? She said, absolutely not. Well, as Ray wrote about this week in Substack, she changed her mind. Isn't that a woman's prerogative?
Well, Charlie.
Send your cards and letters.
Yeah, because
That's a famous song. Eartha Kitt sang that song, did she not?
I'm out of here.
You guys are too young.
You're absolutely right. Like those two historically significant female lawmakers, Barack Obama and Bill Clinton, who changed their minds about gay marriage. Do you remember that? They did what was called politically expedient. That's exactly what Ann Wagner. I didn't know I was going to be wearing pearls tonight and discussing Ann Wagner, but a whole lot of pearl clutching about a woman doing what it takes to get along in Washington, which is what men have been doing since time immemorial.
I would like to disassociate myself with any reference to gender in this. No, but because it's got nothing to do with gender. Ann Wagner has, in my mind...
I think the piling on actually does.
I don't. I do. No, I don't.
The fact that she was horrified by Jim Jordan, the same people who criticize Ann Wagner for cozying up to the MAGA crowd are now criticizing her for distancing herself from Jim Jordan, who is practically Donald Trump in drag, if you will.
I take exception to any suggestion. This, to me, has zero to do with gender, and I don't look at her, for me at least, I can't speak for everybody else. I will say this, that Ann Wagner she just repeated what she did. If you recall, a month before the election in 2016, she
They
called.
all do.
No,
Yeah.
let me finish.
Okay.
She was one of the very only sitting members of Congress to call for Donald Trump to leave the ticket so that Mike Pence could be the candidate. She showed a lot of courage, I thought, at the moment. And then within 2 or 3 months, she was just cooing about Donald Trump. And she's doing it again. The issue with George.
Ray. Can I
The
say
issue
something?
with John-
What did you do last
Cooing.
year?
The issue.
Last year, you said that Trudy Bush Valentine was weak. She wasn't ready for the stage.
said
That
it-
was July of last year.
I said it now.
And then when she won the primary, you wanted her to be the next U.S. Senator.
No, and I never felt she wasn't weak. I didn't,
You
well, I didn't want
endorsed
Eric
her?
Schmidt. Well, excuse me,
Yeah,
I never said a
well,
word about that.
she
Well,
was-
let me say this about Ann Wagner, because I used to be friends with her, and it's easy to say that she has no principles now, but I think she does. She has one underlying principle. She'll do whatever it takes to win, and to not have a primary challenge. And, you know, it's one of those things, would you rather have somebody in office who does the wrong thing thinking it's the right thing, or somebody who will willing to do the wrong thing even though she knows it's the wrong thing?
Yeah,
And that's Ann Wagner.
And I could call her and say, like, you know, as one of your constituents, I'm just so totally disappointed with you, and she could care less.
Right.
So on my side, all I can do is try to find somebody to run against her and beat her.
Exactly.
Because this lame act, you know, that she's playing. You're right. A lot of people are doing it. But
Have done
she's
it.
doing
Always
it.
done
Yeah, but
it.
she's
Who
doing
knows?
it. But
The
she's
whole
doing it
party.
to me.
Maybe there was
I'm one of her constituents.
Maybe after her comments in a smoke-filled room, she got a deal. Maybe
Charlie.
horses
She
were
said
traded. We don't know.
She was happy.
Okay.
with
This is
positions on the border and on a conservative funding plan and child trafficking.
all right.
and-
Bill McClellan, I want to ask you about WashU's professor of medicine, Seth Crosby, who, in a Twitter post, now known as X, he said, regarding Gaza, there should be a cleansing, not an ethnic one, he said in the same post. But he got in trouble. And I can't tell if he's still hired by the university. He said no, but the university says he's still employed there. But do you think that if a professor of medicine tweets something like that, he or she should lose his or her job?
You know, if I were running the school, I wouldn't fire Seth Crosby, but I would bring him in and say, Seth, how many people do you know who have really done well because of their tweets? And the answer is nobody. How many people do you know who've gotten, or have you heard of, who've gotten in trouble for him? Lots of people. What are you thinking? I mean, I just can't understand. He's a professor in genetics or something, and the genetics people, I owe them a great deal at WashU. They worked on me. But just stay in your lane, Seth. Don't tweet about. You know, if he was a social science professor, I'd say, well, maybe he feels that way. But this is just crazy.
Well, I thought it was even worse because he was a genetics professor, because he's talking about cleansing and genetics. They're like, okay, where's this coming from? Yeah. I mean, however, I'm with you. I don't think I would fire the man based upon this. Hopefully, is the only thing he's done like this. I don't know. You know, if they had some reason to fire him before this, and now this is just the last straw, that's a different thing. But I wouldn't have fired him, but I would let it be known that, okay, we can't tolerate this.
But this is such an unusual situation in this particular time, because social media has changed this particular conflict, this massacre on October 6th, and then now the war. But if people feel passionately about it, so I would cut him some slack. I truly would.
You're a good person.
No,
you are. That's,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to move on to the next topic with you, Ray, but if you want.
Well, okay. I was just going to say, I think his comment about the reference to cleansing was a little bit out of context, I think. I mean, I don't think he wasn't calling for the.
Well, you can't tell in a tweet.
No,
That's the problem.
no, you're right. He should. I'm not. I think he should have been.
Awe, he wouldn't be in trouble.
As far as him not tweeting, I will say this. Maybe I should say, as a Jewish person, this is one of the more emotional moments that, for example, for Jews, that we've had in my lifetime, which is considerable. And And so there's, I think people have to be.
Now,
Careful.
I,
Okay,
I wouldn't
one last
fire.
topic.
I wouldn't fire him. I wouldn't fire him until the board came in and said, like, it's either you, Chancellor Reid, him or you, Chancellor Reid. I said, you are so fired.
Okay.
Political expediency.
We have about a minute to go, and Ellen Futterman, who is the publisher or the editor of the Jewish Light, lambasted the Post-Dispatch for its coverage of October 6th. The event, the horrible tragedy happened on a Saturday, but she points out that it didn't make front page until Tuesday for the Post-Dispatch. Do you think the paper deserves some criticism here?
You know, first of all, Ellen Futterman, and she pointed this out, the Jewish Light really stepped up, and I mean, it's what they're supposed to be doing, but they did a remarkable job, so that's nice. You know, the Post-Dispatch is part of, I mean, this is a very difficult story for the press in the first place. For example, and part of it is Israel's response hasn't been that great because, like, they did not attack that hospital and people didn't know. I think the Post-Dispatch is so understaffed, I don't think there was any intent, certainly by the Post, not to cover it. They've pretty much checked out to national coverage on this at this point.
Yeah, I think that the paper's, you know, making a real effort to be really local, and a national story, all we could do is run wire copy.
I forgot there's a saying that whatever it is, it's like, it isn't like a conspiracy. It's just there's not the people there.
That's
there's
right.
just not the knowledge there. But there's no, I don't think you can fuss at them. Like you said, there was nobody here to put the paper out till Monday morning. That's the reality.
Welcome to 2023.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right.
That's right.
Hey, let's see what folks had to say about last week's program. We heard from Paul McCann of St. Louis, who wrote, regarding guaranteed basic income, what do you tell the recipients after 18 months when the program ends? They will say they can't get by without it. They bought a new car, better apartment, big screen TV, etc. Stupid idea. Thank you, Paul. We also heard from Richard Eigenreither, who wrote, Charlie Brennan is dismayed by the possibility that recipients of the guaranteed basic income may spend the money on tattoos. If applicants meet the criteria to receive those funds, who cares if they do? They would be putting money into the economy. Sarah Held wrote, I wish this show was an hour, not 30 minutes. There's so much to talk about. Amen. You can write us, care of 9PBS, 3655 Olive Street, 63108. Don't forget those emails, Donnybrook@9pbs.org. When you post on X, use hashtag DonnybrookSTL, thank you. Call the 9 line, 314-512-9094. Listen to us on your favorite podcast source, Apple, Spotify, TuneIn, and Google Play. Thank you very much for joining us. Hey, best wishes to the bride.
Yeah.
Wiese and Reid. And good luck on Saturday.
I'll need it. I'll need it.
Channel 9 cameras will be there for the toast. We'll see you again next week.
No guns.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.